Rain fell like sheets on the cracked asphalt of Newark's outskirts, turning the streets into dark mirrors reflecting the flickering lights of ancient streetlights. It was one of those November nights when the cold penetrated your bones and the wind howled between the abandoned buildings like a silent warning. The 24/7 diner, a small, worn-looking restaurant on the corner of Mulberry Street, remained open as always, an island of yellow light amid the oppressive darkness. Lara Mitchell was wiping the counter for the third time that hour, her movements mechanical and precise, the result of years of doing exactly the same thing. At 27, she had learned that life didn't hold big surprises for people like her. She'd been working the night shift for almost 5 years, serving tired truckers, third-shift workers, and the occasional questionable character who preferred not to ask questions. Her teal uniform was stained with coffee and grease, and her brown hair, pulled back in a messy bun, revealed unruly strands that framed her pale, tired face. The restaurant was empty at the moment, except for Marcus, the veteran cook, who was snoring softly in the kitchen during his unauthorized break. The smell of fried bacon and stale coffee permeated the air, mingling with the musty odor coming from the broken bathroom in the back. Lara glanced at the clock on the wall. 2:47 a.m. There were still 4 hours left in her shift. She sighed, pouring herself a cup of lukewarm coffee, when a strange sound cut through the constant patter of the rain. Small, hesitant footsteps splashing in the water pooling outside. Lara frowned and moved closer to the fogged-up window, wiping the glass with the sleeve of her uniform to get a better look. What she saw made her heart stop for a moment. A girl, no older than 6 or 7, stood in the pouring rain. Her blonde hair was plastered to her face, and her clothes, a once pretty pink dress, were torn and covered in mud. The child shivered violently, hugging herself as if trying to protect herself not only from the cold, but from something far worse. Her bare feet were bleeding slightly, leaving red marks on the wet ground. But what caught Lara's attention most were the girl's eyes. Even from a distance, through the fogged-up window and the curtain of rain, she could see the absolute terror etched on that little face. It was the look of someone who had seen things no child should see. Without a second thought, Lara dropped her cup on the counter with a thud and ran to the door, pushing it hard against the wind. The bell above the entrance jingled desperately. "Hey! Hey, honey!" Lara shouted, her voice almost lost in the noise of the storm. "Come here, quick!" The girl looked up, and for a moment Lara feared she would run away. But then, as if recognizing a last lifeline amidst the sinking sea, the child stumbled toward the restaurant, her small bare feet slapping against the wet sidewalk. As soon as the girl crossed the threshold, Lara pulled her inside and quickly closed the entrance, blocking out the freezing wind. Water dripped from the child in puddles on the worn linoleum floor, and she shivered so violently that her teeth chattered audibly. "My God, you're freezing," Lara murmured, kneeling down to the girl's level. She took off her apron and wrapped it around the child, rubbing her thin arms in a desperate attempt to warm her. "It's okay now. You're safe. What's your name?" The girl didn't answer. Her saucer-sized blue eyes just stared at Lara with a mixture of fear and distrust. There were bruises on her arms, purple marks that formed very specific patterns, marks from adult fingers that had held her too tightly. Lara's stomach churned. She'd worked in this neighborhood long enough to recognize the signs of violence when she saw them. "It's okay. You don't have to talk," Lara said softly, keeping her voice calm despite the urgency she felt. "Let's warm you up first, okay? You must be hungry too." She guided the girl to one of the red upholstered benches, the ones already ripped and patched with duct tape. The child huddled in the seat, still wrapped in her apron, her eyes following Lara's every move like a cornered animal. Lara ran to the kitchen where Marcus had finally woken up to the noise. "What the hell is going on?" he grumbled, rubbing his swollen eyes. "There's a child outside. I found her in the rain," Lara explained quickly, already grabbing a clean towel from the cupboard. "She needs hot food. Make some hot chocolate and buttered toast. Hurry, Marcus." The man in his 50s looked out the service window and saw the small figure huddled in the seat. His face hardened. He recognized the signs too. "I'll be right there," he said simply, turning on the stove. Lara returned with the towel and began carefully drying the girl's hair, careful not to frighten her further. The child remained still, but Lara noticed that she had begun to relax slightly, her small hands gripping the edges of the apron like armor. "Do you live around here?" Lara asked gently, knowing she probably wouldn't get an answer, but trying to establish some connection. "Do your parents know where you are?" For the first time, the girl reacted. Her eyes widened even more and she shook her head frantically, a strangled sound escaping her throat. It was pure panic. Okay, Lara said quickly, placing a comforting hand on the girl's shoulder. I won't call anyone you don't want, I promise. But I need to know. Are you lost? Did you run away from somewhere? The girl nodded slowly, tears finally welling up in her eyes and running down her dirty cheeks. Lara felt her own heart break. Marcus appeared with a steaming mug of hot chocolate and a plate of golden toast with melted butter. The girl stared at the food as if it were a mirage and then, with almost desperate movements, began to devour the toast, barely chewing before swallowing. Slow down, dear, Lara murmured, holding the mug so the child wouldn't burn herself. No one's going to take this away from you. There's more if you want it. As the girl ate, Lara exchanged meaningful glances with Marcus. They were both thinking the same thing. This situation was serious. The expensive clothes, even torn, it was still clear the dress had been of high quality. The bruises, the absolute terror in the child's eyes, everything pointed to something very, very wrong. Lara grabbed her old cell phone and considered calling the police. But something stopped her. In that neighborhood, calling the police wasn't always the safest solution, especially when you didn't know exactly what you were dealing with. And there was something about the girl's reaction when she mentioned her parents. The decision was taken from her hands when powerful headlights suddenly flooded the restaurant's interior. Lara jumped to her feet and ran to the window, her blood running cold as she saw what lay outside. 3 black SUVs, gleaming even in the rain, had pulled up in front of the 24/7 diner. They weren't police cars, they were much worse. The doors opened simultaneously and men in suits emerged, their hard faces and postures making it clear they weren't the kind of people to take no for an answer. Marcus, Lara called, her voice shaking slightly. Lock the kitchen door. Now. But before Marcus could move, the front door was pushed open with force, the bell jingling almost comically at the tension that had entered along with the men. The first of them was tall, with broad shoulders that completely filled the doorway. His black suit was impeccable despite the rain, and his dark eyes swept the restaurant with the precision of a predator searching for its prey. When he saw the girl huddled on the bench, his face, already hard, became utterly impenetrable. The girl, he said, his voice deep and filled with authority. We'll take her. Lara felt her legs tremble, but something in her, maybe it was stupidity, maybe it was the sight of that small body trembling with fear, made her step forward, positioning herself between the men and the child. Who are you? She asked, surprised by the firmness in her own voice. How do I know you didn't do this to her? The tall man narrowed his eyes, and the other 2 behind him took a menacing step. The tension in the air became almost tangible, electric. Marcus had frozen behind the counter, his face pale. Ma'am, the man said, each word carefully articulated. I strongly suggest you step away. This is not a situation you want to get into. But Lara looked back at the girl who now clutched her apron with trembling hands, her eyes wide with utter terror at the sight of the men. And in that moment, Lara made the most reckless and brave decision of her life. No, she said simply. I'm not handing her over until I know she's safe. So either you prove yourself to me, or you get out of my restaurant. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the rain outside seemed to ease, as if the universe itself were holding its breath. The tall man pulled his phone from his pocket, typed something quickly, and then turned the screen to Lara. Are you watching the news, Miss Mitchell? Lara Mitchell. Miss Mitchell, have you seen what's been on the news for the past 3 weeks? Lara looked at the screen, and her world stopped. It was a photo of the girl, the same girl who was now huddled behind her, smiling in a sunny garden. Above the picture in bold letters was written, Businessman's daughter missing in possible kidnapping. Family offers $2 million reward. Lara's hands trembled. She knew the case. Everyone knew it. The daughter of Adriano Vieri, one of the most powerful and feared men on the East Coast. Officially, he owned a chain of restaurants and casinos. Unofficially, Lara swallowed hard. Sophia, she murmured, remembering the name that had been repeated endlessly in the news. The girl behind her sobbed at the sound of her own name. The man put away his phone. Now do you understand? Mr. Vieri is desperate to get his daughter back, and we are his security team, so please let us do our job. But Lara still didn't move, because something wasn't right. If these men were Vieri's security detail, why was Sophia so terrified? Why had she run away? I want to talk to him, Lara said, her voice firmer than she expected. To Adriano Vieri, in person. The men exchanged incredulous looks. Their leader gave a short, humorless laugh. Ma'am, you have no idea what you're asking. Then he'll have to come here, Lara interrupted, crossing her arms over her chest. Because I'm not handing Sophia over to anyone until I'm absolutely sure she'll be safe. And if you try to force me," she glanced at Marcus, who nodded almost imperceptibly, "I'll scream so loud I'll wake up the whole neighborhood, and someone will call the police. I'm sure Mr. Vieri doesn't want that kind of attention right now, does he?" It was a risky bluff, but it worked. The tall man gritted his teeth, pulled out his cell phone again, and walked away, speaking in a low but urgent voice. Lara could hear fragments. "Complicated situation. Waitress refuses, demands to speak with you." When he hung up, his face was tense. "Mr. Vieri is on his way," he said, each word coming out as if it hurt. "But know that you've just put yourself in a very, very dangerous position, Miss Mitchell." Lara nodded, her false courage beginning to waver now that her adrenaline was wearing off. She returned to Sophia, sitting beside the girl and wrapping a protective arm around her fragile shoulders. "It's okay," she whispered, more to herself than to the child. "It's going to be okay." But as the men strategically positioned themselves around the restaurant and the rain continued to fall outside, Lara wasn't sure she believed her own words, because in approximately 20 minutes, she would be face to face with the most dangerous man in Newark. And I had no idea what would happen next. The clock on the wall read 3:15 a.m., when the brightest headlights Lara had ever seen illuminated the street. Adriano Vieri had arrived. The black Mercedes-Benz S-Class pulled up in front of the diner 24/7 with the quiet purr of German engineering, its sleek body cutting through the rain like a shark through dark water. The headlights cast long, ominous shadows across the cracked pavement, and for a moment everything seemed to freeze. Even the rain appeared to hesitate before striking the ground. Lara felt her breath catch in her throat as the rear door opened. A polished leather shoe emerged first, then another, and finally Adriano Vieri himself stepped out into the storm. He was nothing like she expected, yet exactly what she feared. Adriano Vieri stood at least 6'3", his frame wrapped in a charcoal gray suit that must have cost more than Lara made in 6 months. Despite the downpour, he moved with unhurried precision, as if the weather itself wouldn't dare inconvenience him. His dark hair, streaked with distinguished silver at the temples, was slicked back perfectly, and his face, sharp angles, defined jaw, and eyes that seemed to pierce through darkness, held an expression that was utterly unreadable. But it was those eyes that made Lara's stomach drop. They were dark, almost black in the dim light, and they carried the weight of someone who had seen everything, done everything, and feared nothing. They were the eyes of a man who could order someone's death over breakfast and sleep soundly that night. Adriano didn't run. He walked through the rain as if it were a minor inconvenience, his movements controlled and deliberate. Water soaked through his expensive suit, darkening the fabric, but he didn't seem to notice or care. His focus was singular, laser-sharp, fixed entirely on the windows of the small diner where his daughter was. The security team immediately straightened, their casual menace replaced by rigid military precision. The tall man who had spoken to Lara earlier, she now realized his name was Vincent, rushed to open the diner door for his boss. Adriano stepped inside, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Water dripped from his suit onto the checkered linoleum floor, creating small puddles that reflected the harsh fluorescent lights overhead. He stood there for a moment, his dark eyes scanning the interior of the restaurant with the calculating gaze of a predator assessing its territory. His presence filled the small space, making the already cramped diner feel even smaller, suffocating. When his gaze finally landed on Sophia, something flickered across his face, so brief that Lara almost missed it. Pain. Raw, unbearable pain. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced once more by that impenetrable mask of control. "Sophia," he said, and his voice, deep, accented with traces of his Italian heritage, cracked ever so slightly on his daughter's name. The little girl's reaction was immediate and heartbreaking. She scrambled further back into the booth, pressing herself against the cracked vinyl upholstery, her small hands gripping Lara's uniform with desperate strength. A whimper escaped her throat, and tears streamed down her dirty cheeks. She was terrified of him. Adriano's jaw tightened, and Lara saw his hands, large scarred hands that had undoubtedly done terrible things, curl into fists at his sides. He took one step forward, then stopped himself, as if realizing that his presence was making things worse. "Sophia, piccola mia," he said more softly, switching to Italian for a moment before returning to English. "It's Papa. You're safe now. No one will hurt you anymore." But Sophia only shook her head frantically. burying her face in Lara's side. Lara felt the little girl's fear radiating through her small body, the trembling that wouldn't stop, the shallow, panicked breathing. And in that moment, despite every logical part of her brain screaming that she was making a catastrophic mistake, Lara tightened her protective hold on the child. Adriano's eyes shifted to Lara, really seeing her for the first time. She felt the full weight of his attention, and it took every ounce of willpower not to look away. His gaze traveled over her, the stained uniform, the exhausted face, the defiant set of her shoulders, and something that might have been surprise crossed his features. "You're the one who found her," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Lara replied, proud that her voice didn't shake. "About 20 minutes ago. She was outside in the rain, alone and terrified." Adriano's expression darkened further, if that was even possible. "Vincent," he said without looking away from Lara. "Status report, now." Vincent stepped forward, his face grim. "Sir, we traced the kidnappers to an abandoned warehouse in Kearney. When we breached, the place was empty. Signs of a struggle, blood, not hers, and evidence they left in a hurry. We found her shoe near a broken window. We think she escaped during the chaos, ran through the industrial area and ended up here." "The kidnappers?" Adriano's voice was ice. "3 dead, sir. The ones you dealt with earlier gave up the location before they expired. But there was a 4th we didn't know about. He got away probably when he heard us coming. We're tracking him now." Adriano nodded slowly, processing this information with the cool efficiency of a man used to managing crisis situations. But Lara noticed the muscle twitching in his jaw, the barely controlled fury simmering beneath that calm exterior. He turned his full attention back to Sophia, and his voice softened again, becoming almost gentle, a jarring contrast to the dangerous man standing before them. "Sophia, Mia Stella, look at me, please." The little girl peeked out from behind Lara, her blue eyes, so much like her father's must have been before life had hardened them, red and swollen from crying. "I know you're scared," Adriano continued, and Lara was shocked to hear genuine emotion in his voice. "I know the last 3 weeks have been, I can't even imagine, but you're safe now. I swear on my life, no one will ever hurt you again." Sophia's lower lip trembled, but she didn't move toward him. Adriano exhaled slowly, and for just a second, he looked less like a feared crime boss and more like a devastated father. He ran a hand through his wet hair, disrupting its perfect styling, and seemed to age 10 years in that moment. "What did they do to you?" he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. His hands trembled slightly before he forced them still. Lara felt something shift inside her. She had expected a cold, ruthless criminal. Instead, she was seeing a broken man trying desperately to reach his traumatized daughter. It didn't excuse whatever he was or whatever he'd done, but it made him human. "Mr. Vieri," Lara said carefully, drawing his attention back to her. "I think Sophia needs time. She's been through something terrible, and right now she's not ready to—" "I don't recall asking for your opinion," Adriano interrupted, his voice sharp as a blade. The dangerous man was back. The vulnerable father vanished. "I appreciate that you protected my daughter, but this is a family matter. You should—" "She's scared of you," Lara said bluntly, cutting him off. The words hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Vincent and the other security men tensed, hands moving subtly toward concealed weapons. Marcus, behind the counter, looked like he might pass out. Even the rain outside seemed to pause. Adriano stared at Lara with an expression that had probably been the last thing many people had ever seen. The silence stretched, taut as a wire, ready to snap. "Excuse me?" His voice was deadly quiet. Lara knew she should shut up. Every survival instinct was screaming at her to apologize, to back down, to let this man take his daughter and forget this night ever happened. But when she looked at Sophia's terrified face, she couldn't. "She's scared of you," Lara repeated, forcing herself to meet his eyes. "I don't know why, and maybe it's not rational. Maybe it's just trauma. But right now in this moment she's more afraid of you than she is safe with you. And until that changes, I don't think—" "You don't think," Adriano said, taking a step closer. He towered over her, his presence overwhelming, suffocating. "You, a waitress in a dying diner in the worst part of Newark, don't think I should take my own daughter home. Is that correct?" Lara swallowed hard but held her ground. "I think that little girl has been through hell and she needs to feel safe. And whatever the reason, she doesn't feel safe with you right now. So maybe—" She took a breath, knowing she was about to cross a line she couldn't uncross. "Maybe you should give her a few minutes to remember who you are." For a long moment, Adriano didn't move. didn't speak. The only sound was the rain drumming on the roof and Sophia's quiet sniffling. Then slowly, deliberately, Adriano reached into his jacket. Every muscle in Lara's body tensed, preparing for, she didn't even know what. But what he pulled out wasn't a weapon. It was a leather wallet, worn at the edges, clearly expensive but also clearly well used. He opened it with practiced ease and pulled out a thick stack of $100 bills. He set them on the table between them, the money crisp and green against the stained formica surface. Then he pulled out more and more. The stack grew until there must have been at least $10,000 sitting there. "Name your price," Adriano said, his voice flat, emotionless. 10,000, 20, 50? How much does it cost for you to walk away and let me take my daughter home? Lara stared at the money, more cash than she'd ever seen in her life. She thought about her student loans, the medical bills from her mother's cancer treatment 2 years ago that still haunted her, the broken-down car that needed $1,200 in repairs she couldn't afford. That money could change her life. She looked up at Adriano Vieri, at his hard face and harder eyes, at the man who thought everyone had a price. "No," she said simply. Adriano's eyebrow raised fractionally. "No, I don't want your money, Mr. Vieri." "Everyone wants money," he replied, his tone suggesting he'd heard every conceivable answer to every conceivable problem, and money had solved most of them. Not for this. Lara felt Sophia's grip on her uniform loosen slightly, felt the little girl watching this exchange with wide eyes. "I want something else." Now Adriano looked genuinely curious, perhaps even intrigued. "And what would that be?" Lara took a deep breath. This was it. The moment that would define how the rest of this night, and maybe her entire life, would unfold. "I want your word that whoever did this to Sophia, whoever took her, whoever hurt her, that they face justice. Real justice. Not just disappearing. And I want you to promise that she gets real help. Therapy. Someone who can help her process whatever she went through. Someone who can help her not be afraid anymore." The silence that followed was different from before. It wasn't threatening or tense, it was contemplative. Adriano studied her face as if seeing something he hadn't expected to find. His dark eyes searched hers, looking for, what? Deception? Hidden motives? Whatever he saw, it seemed to satisfy something in him. "You're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid," he said finally. "I haven't decided which." "Haven't?" "Probably both," Lara admitted, and she thought she might have seen the ghost of a smile flicker across his face before it vanished. Adriano glanced at his daughter, still pressed against Lara's side, and something in his expression softened again. "The men who took her are dead," he said quietly, "except for one, and he will be soon. But that's not justice, that's vengeance, and you're right to make that distinction." He paused, seeming to consider his next words carefully. "As for therapy, I'll arrange for the best child psychologist in the country to see her, starting tomorrow." He looked back at Lara. "Does that satisfy your demands?" It wasn't demands, Lara wanted to say. It was a plea, but she simply nodded. Adriano studied her for a moment longer, then did something that shocked everyone in the room. He pulled out one of the diner chairs and sat down, making himself equal height with his daughter rather than looming over her. "Sophia," he said gently, "do you remember what I always told you about being brave?" Sophia peeked out at him, still wary but listening. "I told you that being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared but doing what you need to do anyway. And right now I need you to be brave for me. Can you do that?" The little girl didn't answer, but she didn't hide either. Adriano reached slowly into his pocket and pulled out something small. A stuffed rabbit, worn and loved, one ear slightly torn. "You dropped Mr. Flopsy when they took you. I've been keeping him safe for you." Sophia's eyes widened, and a small sound, not quite a word, more like a gasp, escaped her throat. Her hand slowly, hesitantly, reached out toward the toy. Adriano held it out, not moving closer, letting her come to him. And inch by inch, Sophia slid out of the booth. She moved toward her father with tiny, trembling steps, never taking her eyes off the stuffed rabbit. When she was finally close enough, she snatched it from his hand and clutched it to her chest, burying her face in its worn fur. "Papa," she whispered, her voice hoarse from disuse and crying. Adriano's composure cracked. "Yes, Piccola, it's me. I'm here." And then Sophia threw herself into her father's arms, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. Adriano wrapped his arms around her, holding her as if she might disappear again, his own face contorted with barely suppressed emotion. He buried his face in her dirty, tangled hair, and his shoulders shook with silent sobs. Lara turned away, giving them privacy, wiping at her own eyes. Even Vincent and the security team looked uncomfortable, unused to seeing their boss so vulnerable. After several minutes, Adriano finally composed himself. He stood, still holding Sofia, who had her face pressed against his shoulder, exhausted from crying. He looked at Lara, and this time his expression was different. There was respect there, and something else she couldn't quite identify. "Thank you," he said simply. "You didn't have to do what you did. You risked yourself for a child you didn't know. Anyone would have done the same," Lara replied, though they both knew that wasn't true. Adriano shook his head slightly. "No, not anyone." He paused, seeming to wrestle with something internally. "You're right to question whether she's safe with me. The life I lead. It put her in danger. It almost cost me everything." He looked down at his daughter, now sleeping against his shoulder, finally feeling safe enough to rest. "Things are going to change," he said, more to himself than to Lara. "They have to." He turned to leave, then stopped. Without looking back, he said, "Someone will come by tomorrow to properly thank you. I told you I don't want—" "I know," Adriano interrupted. "You don't want money. We established that. But you're getting something anyway." "Because I always pay my debts, Miss Mitchell. Always." And with that, he walked out into the rain, his security team forming a protective circle around him and Sofia. The SUVs roared to life, and within seconds, they were gone, leaving only the sound of rain and the fading glow of taillights. Lara stood in the empty diner, still processing what had just happened. Marcus emerged from behind the counter, his face pale. "Girl," he said, his voice shaking slightly, "do you have any idea what you just did?" Lara sank into one of the booth seats, suddenly exhausted. "Probably something really stupid. You stood up to Adriano Vieri. Nobody does that. Nobody." "Well," Lara said, looking at the stack of money still sitting on the table, money Adriano had forgotten or deliberately left. "I guess I just did." She had no idea that her decision that night, to protect a little girl and demand humanity from a monster, would change both their lives forever. But she would find out soon enough. The clock on the wall read 4:47 a.m. when Lara finally locked up the diner, the first hints of dawn breaking through the rain clouds. She didn't know it yet, but she'd never work another quiet night shift again. Lara didn't sleep when she finally got home at 7:30 that morning. How could she? Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Sofia's terrified face, heard Adriano Vieri's cold voice asking her to name her price, felt the weight of those dark eyes studying her as if trying to decode a puzzle he'd never encountered before. Her apartment was a small studio in a building that had seen better days, probably sometime in the 1970s. The radiator clanked and hissed. The single window overlooked a brick wall and the water pressure was a joke. But it was hers, paid for with her own money, and that meant something. The walls were decorated with thrift store paintings and photographs she'd taken herself, mostly nature shots from the rare times she could afford to leave the city. A dying succulent sat on the windowsill, her one attempt at making the place feel alive. She made coffee in her ancient Mr. Coffee machine, the same one her mother had used, and sat on her worn couch, staring at her phone. The local news was already running the story. "Vieri heiress found safe." The headline screamed across every news site, accompanied by stock photos of Adriano Vieri at various business events, always in an impeccable suit, always with that unreadable expression. Sofia Vieri, 6, daughter of prominent businessman Adriano Vieri, was recovered early this morning after a 3-week disappearance that sparked a massive manhunt across the tri-state area, the article read. Sources close to the family say the child is safe and reunited with her father. No arrests have been made, and authorities are not releasing details about how or where she was found. No mention of a diner, no mention of a waitress, no mention of the truth. Lara should have felt relieved. The last thing she needed was media attention, or worse, attention from the kinds of people who operated in Adriano Vieri's world. But something about the sanitized version of events bothered her. It felt like her role, the risk she'd taken, the stand she'd made, had been erased, deemed too inconvenient for the official narrative. She was being naive, she knew. This was how power worked. It rewrote reality to suit itself. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "You okay? That was insane. Call me when you wake up." She typed back, "I'm fine. Awake, actually. Can't sleep." His response came immediately. "Me neither. Been thinking about what happened all morning. You know this isn't over, right?" Lara stared at the message. She knew he was right. Adriano Vieri had said someone would come by today to properly thank her. What did that mean? More money she'd refuse? Some kind of warning disguised as gratitude? A job offer? Or a threat? She was about to respond when she heard it. The sound of multiple car engines outside her building. Powerful and expensive. Completely out of place in this neighborhood where most people took the bus or drove 20-year-old Hondas held together with prayer and duct tape. Lara's heart began to race. She moved to her window and carefully pushed aside the thin curtain. 3 black SUVs were parked on the street below, the same ones from last night. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." She watched as men in suits emerged, Vincent among them, and began taking positions around her building. It was just past 8 in the morning and the street was starting to come alive with people heading to work, mothers walking children to school, bodega owners opening their shops. Everyone stopped to stare at the obvious display of wealth and power. Lara's hands trembled as she grabbed her phone. Should she call 911? And tell them what? That scary men in suits were standing outside her building. They hadn't done anything illegal. Yet. A knock on her door made her jump so violently she nearly dropped her phone. "Miss Mitchell?" A woman's voice, professional and calm. "My name is Elena Rossi. I work for Mr. Vieri. He sent me to speak with you. I promise you're not in any danger." Lara approached the door cautiously, checking through the peephole. A woman in her early 40s stood there, dressed in an elegant navy pantsuit, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. She held a leather portfolio and had the composed demeanor of someone used to handling delicate situations. "I'm going to need more than promises," Lara called through the door. Elena seemed to expect this. She held up a business card to the peephole. "I'm an attorney with Castellano & Associates. Mr. Vieri retained our firm this morning to handle a sensitive matter involving you. I have documentation, references, and I'm happy to wait in the hallway while you verify my credentials. Take your time. An attorney. That could be good or very, very bad." Lara quickly Googled the firm on her phone. Castellano & Associates was legitimate, one of the most prestigious law firms in New York, actually. She found Elena Rossi's profile. Harvard Law, 15 years of experience in family law and crisis management. Nothing to suggest she was anything other than exactly what she claimed to be. Still, Lara's gut churned with anxiety as she unlocked the door, keeping the chain engaged so it would only open a few inches. Elena stood patiently in the dim hallway, making no move to force her way in. Up close, she had kind eyes and smile lines around her mouth, not what Lara expected from someone who worked for Adriano Vieri. "May I come in?" Elena asked. "I understand you're frightened, but I really do just need to talk to you. And I brought breakfast." She held up a bag from Balthazar, a bakery Lara had walked past 100 times but never been able to afford. The smell of fresh croissants and real coffee wafted through the gap in the door. Despite everything, Lara's stomach growled. She hadn't eaten since before her shift last night. Against her better judgment, she unlatched the chain and opened the door. Elena stepped inside, her eyes quickly taking in the small apartment without judgment. She set the bag on Lara's tiny kitchen counter and began unpacking it with efficient movements. 2 croissants, real butter, fresh fruit, and a latte that probably cost more than Lara's entire weekly grocery budget. "Please eat," Elena said, gesturing to the food. "You've had a long night and you're going to need your energy for this conversation." Lara wanted to be suspicious, wanted to refuse out of principle, but she was exhausted and starving. She sat at her small table, and Elena sat across from her, opening her portfolio. "First things first," Elena began, pulling out several documents. "Mr. Vieri asked me to convey his gratitude for what you did last night. You protected his daughter when you had no obligation to do so, and you refused payment for your actions. That's unusual, in his experience." "I didn't do it for money," Lara said, biting into the croissant. It was the best thing she'd ever tasted. "I know. That's why I'm here." Elena slid a document across the table. "Mr. Vieri is a man who repays his debts, Miss Mitchell. Always. Since you won't accept money, he's offering you something else, a way out." Lara frowned, scanning the document. Her eyes widened as she read. It was a job offer. Not just any job offer. A management position at Stella Notte, one of Vieri's upscale restaurants in Manhattan. The salary was listed as $75,000 a year, plus benefits, health insurance, and a signing bonus of $10,000. Lara couldn't find words. "This is insane." "It's generous," Elena corrected gently, "but not insane. You demonstrated qualities last night that Mr. Vieri values. Courage, integrity, and genuine compassion. Those are rare in his world. He believes you'd be an asset to his legitimate business operations. Legitimate, Lara repeated, the word tasting like ash in her mouth. Is anything about Adriano Vieri legitimate? Elena's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Respect, maybe, for Lara's directness. Mr. Vieri owns 17 restaurants, 3 hotels, and several other businesses that operate entirely within the law. Those businesses need good people to run them, people he can trust. And he thinks he can trust me? He just met me. You had the opportunity to extort him last night, Elena pointed out. You had his traumatized daughter, you knew who he was, and you knew he'd pay anything to get her back safely. Instead, you asked for nothing but her well-being. That tells him everything he needs to know about your character. Lara set down the croissant, her appetite suddenly gone. This feels like I'm being bought. You are, Elena said bluntly, surprising Lara with her honesty. But not in the way you think. Mr. Vieri isn't trying to own you or silence you. He's trying to give you the opportunity to change your life. What you do with that opportunity is entirely up to you. And if I say no, then you say no. You go back to your job at the diner, we leave you alone, and life continues as it was. Elena paused. But let me ask you something, Miss Mitchell. How long have you been working at that diner? 5 years. And in those 5 years, how much have things improved for you? How much closer are you to whatever dreams you had before life beat them out of you? The question hit harder than Lara expected. She thought about her student loans, her mother's medical debt, her aging car, this cramped apartment, the endless nights of serving drunk men and exhausted workers, smelling like grease and old coffee, going nowhere, being no one. That's not fair, she said quietly. No, Elena agreed. It's not fair, none of this is fair, but it's real. And sometimes life gives us chances to change our trajectory. The question is whether we're brave enough to take them. Lara looked at the contract again, reading through the details. It seemed straightforward. No hidden clauses, no suspicious terms. Just a job offer. A legitimate job offer that could change everything. Why? She asked finally. Why does he care? He has his daughter back. Why go through all this trouble for someone like me? Elena was quiet for a moment, seeming to choose her words carefully. I've worked with Mr. Vieri for 3 years now, handling various legal matters. He's complex, ruthless in many ways, yes, but he has a code, a set of rules he lives by. One of those rules is that debts must be repaid. You gave him back his daughter. You gave him back his world. There's no amount of money that adequately compensates for that. So he's doing the next best thing, giving you a chance at a better life. She leaned forward slightly. And between you and me, I think what you did last night affected him more than he wants to admit. You treated him like a person, not a monster or a wallet. You demanded he be a better father. No one has spoken to him like that in years. Maybe ever. I think he respects you for it. Lara's head was spinning. 24 hours ago, her biggest problem had been whether her car would make it through another winter. Now she was sitting in her apartment with a high-powered attorney, being offered a job that would triple her salary, all because she'd done what any decent person would do, protected a scared child. I need time to think, she said. Of course. Elena stood, leaving the contract on the table. Take a few days, my number is on the card. Call me when you've decided. She moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. Mr. Vieri asked me to tell you that regardless of your decision, you have his protection. There was a 4th kidnapper who escaped. He's still out there, and he might have seen you last night. Mr. Vieri's security team will be keeping an eye on you until that loose end is tied up. You won't see them, but they'll be there. A chill ran down Lara's spine. She hadn't even thought about that possibility. Is that a threat or a promise? A promise, Elena said firmly. Mr. Vieri protects what's his. And right now, whether you like it or not, you're under his protection because you protected his daughter. That's not negotiable. After Elena left, Lara sat in her apartment surrounded by the remnants of an expensive breakfast she couldn't finish, staring at a contract that promised to change her life, knowing that men with guns were somewhere nearby, watching her building. She picked up her phone and called Marcus. You're not going to believe what just happened, she said when he answered. Try me. After last night, I'll believe anything. So she told him everything, the job offer, the attorney, the protection detail she apparently now had, whether she wanted it or not. When she finished, Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, You're going to take it, aren't you? I don't know, Lara admitted. It feels wrong, like I'm being pulled into something I don't understand. Maybe, Marcus said, or maybe it's exactly what it looks like. A chance to stop struggling for once in your damn life. Lara, you're 27 years old. You work 60 hours a week and can barely pay your bills. You haven't been on a vacation in 5 years. You eat ramen for dinner most nights. When's the last time you bought yourself something nice? When's the last time you weren't exhausted? Tears pricked at Lara's eyes because he was right. She was so tired. But it's coming from him, she whispered. From that world. The restaurant job is legitimate, Marcus pointed out. Elena said so, and you verified the firm. You wouldn't be working for the mob, Lara. You'd be working for a restaurant. A really nice restaurant that happens to be owned by a complicated man who's grateful you saved his daughter. There's a difference. Was there? Lara wasn't sure anymore. She spent the rest of the day in her apartment, alternating between staring at the contract and researching Stella Nata. The restaurant had excellent reviews, a stellar reputation, and from what she could tell, operated completely legally. Former employees praised the working conditions, the pay, the professional environment. It seemed normal. Better than normal, actually. By the time the sun set, Lara had made her decision. She picked up Elena's card and dialed the number. Miss Mitchell, Elena answered on the second ring. Have you decided? Yes, Lara said, her voice steadier than she felt. I'll take the job, but I have conditions. I'm listening. I want it in writing that if I ever see anything illegal, anything at all, I can walk away. No consequences. And I want to meet with Mr. Vieri, face to face, before I sign anything. There was a pause. Then Elena said, I'll arrange it. How does tomorrow afternoon work for you? Lara's breath caught. Tomorrow? Mr. Vieri is a man of action, Miss Mitchell. When he makes a decision, he moves quickly. His estate, 2 p.m. A car will pick you up. His estate? Lara repeated faintly. Of course he has an estate. She thought she heard Elena smile. Indeed he does. Wear something comfortable. And Miss Mitchell? You made the right choice. After she hung up, Lara sat on her couch, watching the lights of the city flicker outside her window, and wondered if she'd just made the best decision of her life or signed away her soul without realizing it. Tomorrow she would find out. Tomorrow she would enter Adriano Vieri's world, and there would be no going back. The black Mercedes arrived at Lara's building at exactly 1:30 p.m., 30 minutes early, as if to remind her that in Adriano Vieri's world, punctuality wasn't just expected, it was a religion. Lara had spent the morning in a state of controlled panic, trying on every piece of clothing she owned and hating all of it. Her wardrobe consisted mainly of her diner uniform, some worn jeans, a few clearance rack blouses, and one black dress she'd bought for her mother's funeral 2 years ago. Nothing seemed appropriate for meeting a man who probably had suits that cost more than her monthly rent. She finally settled on dark jeans, a simple cream-colored sweater, and the only pair of boots she owned that didn't have scuff marks. It would have to do. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was just trying not to look like she'd walked out of a thrift store, even though that's exactly where most of her clothes came from. The driver who emerged from the Mercedes was not Vincent or any of the men from the previous night. This was someone new, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a professional demeanor that immediately put her somewhat at ease. He wore a simple black suit and held an umbrella, though the November sky was clear and cold. Miss Mitchell? He said with a slight smile. My name is Thomas. I'll be driving you to Mr. Vieri's residence. Please take your time. We're in no rush. Lara grabbed her purse, a worn leather bag that had belonged to her mother, and locked her apartment. As she descended the stairs, she noticed something that made her pause. Mrs. Chen from apartment 2B was sweeping her doorway, but she kept glancing toward the Mercedes with an expression that was half curiosity, half concern. You okay, Lara? The elderly woman called out in her accented English. Those men, they've been around, watching. You in some kind of trouble? So Marcus had been right. The security detail was real and visible enough that her neighbors had noticed. I'm fine, Mrs. Chen, Lara assured her, though she wasn't entirely sure that was true. Just meeting someone about a new job opportunity. Mrs. Chen's skeptical expression suggested she wasn't buying the casual explanation, but she nodded anyway. You be careful, girl. Men with cars like that, they want something. Always. Lara couldn't argue with that logic. Thomas held the door open for her, and she slid into the back seat of the Mercedes, immediately enveloped in the scent of expensive leather and subtle cologne. The interior was immaculate, with climate control that had already adjusted to the perfect temperature, and the kind of smooth, quiet ride that made her forget they were driving through Newark's pothole-riddled streets. The drive will take about 40 minutes, Thomas informed her, his eyes meeting hers briefly in the rearview mirror. Mr. Vieri's estate is in Alpine, just across the state line into New Jersey. Please help yourself to the water or snacks in the console if you'd like. Alpine. Of course. One of the wealthiest zip codes in America, where houses started at several million and went up from there, where celebrities and business moguls hid behind gates and hedges, living in a different universe from people like Lara. As they left Newark behind, crossing into increasingly affluent suburbs, Lara watched the scenery transform. The crumbling buildings and chain-link fences gave way to manicured lawns and luxury cars, then to actual estates with circular driveways and fountains. By the time they reached Alpine, she felt like she'd driven to another planet. First time in this area? Thomas asked, his tone conversational rather than judgmental. Is it that obvious? Lara asked with a self-deprecating smile. Not at all. But I remember my first time seeing these houses. Makes you realize how the other half lives, doesn't it? There was something in his voice, not quite bitterness, but definitely awareness. Been driving for Mr. Vieri for 8 years now. Good man to work for, despite what you might have heard. Lara wanted to ask what he meant by that, but before she could, they turned onto a private road marked only by a discreet sign. Vieri Estate, private property. A gate that looked like it could stop a tank opened automatically as they approached, and they drove through, following a winding driveway lined with ancient oak trees that must have been planted a century ago. And then she saw it. The Vieri Estate wasn't just a house, it was a compound. The main residence was a massive Italian Renaissance-style villa, all warm stone and terracotta tiles, with arched windows and ornate balconies that looked like something transported directly from Tuscany. The grounds stretched in every direction, featuring formal gardens, a fountain that belonged in a Roman piazza, and in the distance, what looked like a guest house that was larger than Lara's entire apartment building. Jesus, Lara whispered. Thomas chuckled softly. That's what everyone says the first time. Mr. Vieri designed it himself, actually. Worked with architects for 3 years to get every detail right. He's very particular about his home. The Mercedes pulled up to the main entrance where wide stone steps led to massive wooden doors that probably weighed more than Lara's car. 2 men in suits stood discreetly to either side. Security, obviously, though they were far less intimidating than Vincent and his team had been. As Thomas opened her door, the main entrance opened as well, and Elena Rossi emerged, now dressed in an elegant charcoal pantsuit, her professional smile firmly in place. Miss Mitchell, welcome, she said warmly. How was the drive? Surreal, Lara admitted, stepping out of the car and trying not to gawk at her surroundings. Yes, it can be overwhelming the first time. Please come inside. Mr. Vieri is finishing up a call, but he'll be with you shortly. The interior of the house was somehow even more impressive than the exterior. The entry hall featured marble floors, a sweeping staircase that curved up to a second floor, and artwork that Lara strongly suspected wasn't reproduction. Everything was elegant but not ostentatious, expensive without being gaudy. It spoke of old money and refined taste, which seemed at odds with what Lara knew about Adriano Vieri's reputation. Elena led her through several rooms, a formal sitting room, a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a hallway lined with what appeared to be family photographs, before arriving at a sunlit conservatory overlooking the back gardens. The space was filled with plants and comfortable seating, and a tea service was already set up on a low table. Please sit, Elena said, gesturing to one of the chairs. Can I get you anything? Tea, coffee, water? Tea is fine, thank you, Lara said, feeling completely out of her depth. As Elena poured, Lara noticed something that made her heart clench. Children's toys scattered in the corner of the conservatory. A dollhouse, some stuffed animals, coloring books. Sophia's things clearly left out, as if the little girl had just been playing there moments ago. How is she? Lara asked suddenly. Sophia, is she okay? Elena's professional demeanor softened. She's processing. The psychologist has been here twice already. She's not speaking much yet, but she's eating, sleeping, and she's safe. That's what matters right now. Does she remember? She remembers you, Elena confirmed. She's asked about the nice lady from the restaurant several times. Mr. Vieri thought you might like to know that. Before Lara could respond, she heard footsteps, confident, measured, approaching from the hallway. Her entire body tensed instinctively, and she set down her teacup before she dropped it. Adriano Vieri entered the conservatory, and Lara was struck by how different he looked from that rainy night at the diner. Gone was the soaked suit and the desperate, dangerous edge. Today, he wore dark slacks and a crisp white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, no tie, the top button undone. His dark hair was slightly damp as if he'd just showered, and he carried with him that same overwhelming presence, but tempered somehow. Here, in his own home, he seemed more human. Still dangerous, still commanding, but human. "Miss Mitchell?" he said, his accent more pronounced than she remembered. "Thank you for coming." Lara stood automatically, some long-dormant sense of propriety kicking in. "Mr. Vieri, please sit." He gestured for her to return to her chair while he took the seat across from her. Elena quietly excused herself, leaving them alone. "I trust the drive was comfortable?" "Very," Lara said, hating how nervous she sounded. "Your home is beautiful. Thank you. It's modeled after my family's estate in Tuscany where I spent summers as a child." He poured himself tea with surprisingly delicate movements for such large hands. "I find that surrounding myself with reminders of simpler times helps balance the complexity of my current life." They sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the gentle tinkling of spoons against porcelain. Lara noticed that despite his relaxed posture, Adriano's dark eyes were watching her carefully, assessing, analyzing. "You wanted to meet with me before accepting the position," he said finally. "Elena mentioned you had conditions." "Yes," Lara said, forcing herself to meet his gaze directly. "I wanted to make sure I understand exactly what I'm agreeing to. The job at Stellanote, is it real? Or is it just a way to, I don't know, keep me close? Keep me quiet?" Adriano's expression didn't change, but she saw a flicker of something, respect maybe, in his eyes. "You don't trust easily. Good. That will serve you well." He set down his teacup. "The position is entirely real. Stellanote needs a new general manager. The previous one retired last month to spend time with his grandchildren. The job is legitimate, demanding, and will require actual skill and dedication. You won't be a placeholder." "But I have no experience managing a restaurant like that," Lara pointed out. "I've been a waitress, not management. Why would you hire someone so underqualified?" "Because credentials can be taught, but character cannot," Adriano replied. "You demonstrated more character in one night than most people I've employed demonstrate in years. The rest, the skills, the knowledge, you'll learn. We'll provide training, support, mentorship. But the foundation of who you are, the integrity you showed when you refused to profit from my daughter's pain, that's invaluable." Lara shook her head. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Adriano said firmly. "You did what you hoped anyone would do. There's a difference. Most people, when confronted with power and money, they calculate. They think about what they can extract from the situation. You didn't. You thought only of a frightened child's welfare. That makes you rare, Miss Mitchell. Rare enough that I want you working for me rather than wasting your potential in a diner that doesn't appreciate you." His words struck something deep in Lara, a place where she kept all her deferred dreams and abandoned ambitions. She'd convinced herself over the years that she was content with her small life, that wanting more was greedy or unrealistic. But hearing someone powerful, someone successful, tell her that she was wasting her potential. "What if I see something I shouldn't?" she asked, voicing her biggest fear. "What if, despite all assurances that your restaurants are legitimate, I discover they're not?" Adriano leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Then you walk away. No consequences, no retaliation. You have my word." The word of a... Lara stopped herself, but it was too late. "Of a criminal." Adriano finished for her, his tone neutral. "You can say it, Miss Mitchell. I'm well aware of my reputation. Much of it is earned. But I keep my word, especially to those who've shown me loyalty and integrity. Elena will include a clause in your contract that allows you to terminate your employment immediately if you witness anything illegal, with 6 months severance pay and a letter of recommendation. Will that suffice?" It was more than fair. It was generous to the point of being suspicious. "Why are you really doing this?" Lara asked quietly. "And please don't give me the line about repaying debts, there's something else." Adriano was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes fixed on something beyond the conservatory windows. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, more vulnerable. "The night Sophia was taken, I was in a meeting. An important meeting about an acquisition that would have expanded my legitimate business holdings significantly. My head of security called 3 times. I ignored him because I was negotiating. By the time I answered, she'd been gone for 45 minutes. 45 minutes that might have made the difference between catching them immediately and 3 weeks of hell." He turned back to Lara, and she saw something raw in his expression. I've spent my entire adult life building power, accumulating wealth, creating an empire that makes me untouchable. And yet, when my daughter needed me most, all of that power was worthless. I couldn't find her. For 3 weeks, I tore this city apart, used every resource at my disposal, called in every favor, and I still couldn't find her. She was in a warehouse in Kearney, 15 miles from here, and I had no idea. He paused, his jaw tight. Then you, a waitress making minimum wage, found her by simply being in the right place at the right time and choosing to care. You had no obligation, no reason, and yet you protected her like she was your own. You stood up to my men. You stood up to me, and you asked for nothing in return except her safety. Adriano leaned forward, his intense gaze locked on Lara. That night taught me something I'd forgotten, that real strength isn't about power or money or fear. It's about basic human decency in moments when no one is watching, when there's no reward. You reminded me of that. And I want people like you in my life, Miss Mitchell, because I need to remember. For Sophia's sake, I need to be better than what I've become. Lara felt tears prick her eyes. This wasn't what she'd expected. She'd expected arrogance, maybe veiled threats, perhaps cold calculation. Not this. Not honesty that cut so deep it hurt to hear. I'm not a saint, she said softly. I'm just a person trying to get by. I know, Adriano said. That's exactly why I want you working for me. I don't need saints. I need real people who make real choices based on real values. So I'll ask you directly, will you accept the position at Stella Notte? Lara thought about her apartment, her struggling car, her student loans, her endless nights at the diner. She thought about Mrs. Chen's warning, about the risks of entering this world, about all the ways this could go wrong. But she also thought about Sophia's frightened face, about Adriano's raw honesty, about the chance to finally stop just surviving and start actually living. Yes, she said, I'll take the job. Adriano's face didn't exactly smile, but something in his expression eased as if a weight had lifted. Good. Elena will handle all the paperwork. You'll start next Monday. That gives you a week to settle any affairs. Give notice at the diner. Your training will begin immediately. He stood, extending his hand. Lara stood as well and shook it, surprised by the warmth and firmness of his grip. There's one more thing, Adriano said, releasing her hand. Would you like to see Sophia? She's been asking about you. Lara's breath caught. Would that be okay? I don't want to upset her. I think it might help her, Adriano said quietly. To see that you're real, that you're safe, that not all endings are bad. He led her through the house, up the sweeping staircase to the second floor. The hallway was lined with more family photographs. Adriano when he was younger, a beautiful woman who must have been Sophia's mother, various relatives. They stopped at a door decorated with hand-painted butterflies. Adriano knocked gently. Sophia? Piccola, there's someone here to see you. The door opened a crack and a small face peeked out. When Sophia saw Lara, her eyes widened, and for a terrifying moment Lara thought she'd made a mistake, that seeing her would trigger bad memories. But then Sophia's face broke into the most beautiful smile Lara had ever seen. The nice lady, she exclaimed, her voice hoarse but eager. She threw open the door and without hesitation, wrapped her small arms around Lara's legs in a fierce hug. Lara knelt down, returning the embrace, feeling the little girl's heartbeat against her chest. Hi, sweetheart. I'm so glad you're okay. Papa said you saved me, Sophia whispered. He said you were brave. You were the brave one, Lara corrected gently. You escaped all by yourself. That took so much courage. Sophia pulled back, studying Lara's face with those solemn blue eyes. Will you come visit me again? Lara glanced up at Adriano, who nodded slightly. I will, Lara promised. As often as your papa says it's okay. Yay? Sophia did a little jump, the first truly childlike thing Lara had seen her do. Then she grabbed Lara's hand. Do you want to see my room? I have a dollhouse. For the next 20 minutes, Lara sat on the floor of Sophia's bedroom, a princess paradise of pink and white with more toys than any child could possibly need, and listened to Sophia chatter about her dolls, her favorite stories, her pet fish named Bubbles. The trauma was still there, visible in the shadows behind her eyes, in the way she startled at sudden sounds, but she was healing. She was going to be okay. When it was finally time to leave, Sophia hugged Lara one more time, whispering, Thank you for finding me. Thank you for being brave enough to run, Lara whispered back. Adriano walked her back downstairs, and Lara could have sworn she saw moisture in his eyes when they reached the entry hall. "Thank you," he said simply. "For everything. Thomas will drive you home. Elena will be in touch tomorrow with the paperwork." As Lara rode back through the increasingly familiar route, watching the mansions give way to suburbs give way to her neighborhood, she realized that her life had just changed completely. She'd entered Adriano Vieri's world, and somehow, impossibly, she felt like she'd made the right choice. Monday morning, Lara Mitchell would start her new life, but she didn't know yet that the fourth kidnapper was watching, and that everything was about to get much more complicated. Lara gave her 2 weeks' notice at the diner 24/7 the next morning, though Elena had made it clear she didn't need to. The signing bonus alone would have covered her expenses, but it felt wrong to just abandon Marcus and the handful of regulars who depended on the place being open at ungodly hours. Besides, she needed those 2 weeks to process everything that had happened, to convince herself this wasn't some elaborate dream she'd wake up from. Marcus took the news better than she expected. "About damn time you got out of this place," he said, flipping eggs on the griddle with practiced ease. "You've got potential, Lara. Always have. Just needed someone to see it." "I'm going to miss you," she admitted, feeling unexpectedly emotional. "Hell, you think I'm staying here forever?" Marcus grinned. "Give it 6 months. Once you're settled at that fancy restaurant, you put in a good word for an old cook who makes the best hash browns in Newark." They both laughed, but there was truth beneath the joke. Lara made a mental note to actually do that when the time came. The 2 weeks passed in a strange blur. During her shifts at the diner, life felt normal. The same customers, the same orders, the same rhythm she'd known for 5 years. But between shifts, Elena called daily with updates. The contract was finalized, her background check was complete. She tried not to think too hard about how thorough Adriano Vieri's people had been. Her training schedule was set, and she'd been assigned a mentor, the head sommelier at Stella Notte, a woman named Claudia Moretti, who had 30 years of fine dining experience. Lara also received a package on her 4th day, a clothing allowance card and a note from Elena. "For professional attire, you'll need it. Don't worry about the budget. Mr. Vieri insists you look the part." She'd stood in Nordstrom for an hour, overwhelmed by the prices and the saleswomen who looked at her thrift store clothes with barely concealed disdain, before finally allowing herself to buy 3 professional outfits, new shoes, and a proper winter coat. The total made her physically ill until she remembered that this wasn't coming out of her own nearly empty bank account. On her second-to-last shift, something happened that she would replay in her mind 1,000 times afterward. It was 2:30 a.m., that dead zone between the after-bar crowd and the before-work crowd, when the diner was empty except for one customer, a man in a dark hoodie sitting in the corner booth, nursing a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. Lara had noticed him when he came in around midnight. There was something off about him, something that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. He'd barely touched his food, just sat there watching. Not watching his phone or reading anything. Watching her. "That guy's weird," Marcus muttered, glancing through the service window. "Been staring at you all night. Probably just drunk," Lara said, but she didn't believe it. She'd dealt with drunk customers for years. This was different. Around 3 a.m., the man finally stood up, threw a 20 on the table without waiting for change, and walked out. Lara exhaled in relief, but it was short-lived. Through the window, she watched him cross the street and lean against a building directly across from the diner, lighting a cigarette, still watching. "Marcus, I think we should call someone," Lara said, her voice tight with unease. "Who? Cops? They don't give a shit about weird guys standing on corners in this neighborhood." But Lara had another option now. She pulled out her phone and found Elena's number. It was 3 a.m., but something told her Elena would answer, and she did, on the second ring. "Miss Mitchell, what's wrong?" Lara explained the situation, the man who'd been watching her who was now standing outside. She felt silly even saying it, like she was being paranoid, but Elena's response was immediate and serious. "Stay inside. Lock the doors. Don't go outside for any reason. I'm sending people now. They'll be there in 10 minutes. Elena, I might just be overreacting. Mr. Vieri's security has been monitoring you, Miss Mitchell. If they thought this person was harmless, they would have already intervened. The fact that they haven't means they're assessing the threat level. Stay put." Elena hung up, and Lara's hands started shaking. She told Marcus what Elena had said, and together they locked the front door, something they never did during operating hours, and moved away from the windows. 8 minutes later, Lara counted every one. 2 black SUVs pulled up with the kind of aggressive speed that made people dive out of the way. Vincent emerged from the first one, along with 3 other men Lara recognized from the night she'd found Sophia. What happened next occurred so fast that Lara almost missed it. The man in the hoodie saw them coming and ran, but he wasn't fast enough. Two of Vincent's team cut him off at the end of the block while Vincent himself pursued from behind. Within 30 seconds, the man was on the ground, face first, with Vincent's knee in his back and zip ties securing his wrists. Vincent spoke into his phone briefly, then dragged the man who was shouting obscenities and threats to one of the SUVs and shoved him in the back seat. The whole encounter took maybe 90 seconds. Then Vincent walked calmly to the diner door and knocked. Lara, heart pounding, unlocked it. "You're safe, Miss Mitchell," Vincent said, his professional demeanor firmly in place. "The threat has been neutralized." "Who was he?" Lara asked, though part of her already knew. Vincent's expression darkened. "The fourth kidnapper, the one who got away. He's been looking for loose ends, trying to figure out who found the girl and whether they could identify him. When he saw you on the news—" "I wasn't on the news," Lara interrupted. "You were in the background of one shot, barely visible, when reporters were filming the street outside the location where Sophia was recovered. He must have recognized the diner, staked it out, confirmed it was you." Vincent paused. "You did the right thing calling Elena. If you'd left for your car alone, or if he'd caught you outside." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. "What happens to him now?" Lara asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. "He'll be questioned, thoroughly, and then he'll be turned over to the authorities with enough evidence to put him away for the rest of his life." Mr. Vieri's orders were very specific. Everything by the book this time. No disappearances. Vincent's emphasis on this time sent a chill down Lara's spine. After Vincent and his team left, taking the struggling kidnapper with them, Lara and Marcus stood in the empty diner, the fluorescent lights humming overhead, trying to process what had just happened. "You really stepped into some serious shit," Marcus said finally. "I know," Lara whispered. "I know." She didn't sleep that night, or the next. She kept seeing that man's face, kept thinking about what might have happened if Elena hadn't answered, if Vincent's team hadn't been watching, if she'd been just a little less careful. On her last day at the diner, Marcus threw her a small party, just the two of them and a handful of regulars who'd become something like friends over the years. There was a sheet cake from the supermarket and some cheap champagne, and it was perfect in its simplicity. To Lara, Marcus said, raising his plastic cup, "Who's going to bigger and better things, but better not forget us little people?" "To not getting murdered by kidnappers," one of the regulars added, and everyone laughed, though Lara's laugh was shaky. When her shift ended at 7 a.m., she walked out of the diner 24/7 for the last time as an employee. The sun was rising over Newark, painting the grimy streets in shades of gold and orange, and Lara felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, about to jump without knowing if there was water below. Monday morning arrived with cold rain and gray skies that matched Lara's nervous energy. She'd barely slept, had changed outfits 4 times, and had seriously considered calling Elena to say she'd made a mistake, that she couldn't do this. But at 8:45 a.m., she stood outside Stella Nata in Manhattan's Tribeca neighborhood, staring up at the elegant brownstone that housed one of the city's most acclaimed restaurants. The exterior was understated but sophisticated. No flashy signs, just a discreet brass plaque beside a dark green door that looked like it belonged to a very expensive private residence. Lara took a deep breath, smoothed down her new blazer, and walked inside. The interior took her breath away. Where the diner had been all harsh lights and cracked vinyl, Stella Nata was warm lighting, rich wood and art that probably cost more than Lara's entire education. The dining room wasn't open yet, but she could see staff preparing for lunch service, servers in crisp uniforms, someone polishing wine glasses until they gleamed, a florist arranging fresh flowers on each table. "You must be Lara." She turned to find a woman in her early 50s approaching with a warm smile. She had elegant silver hair pulled back in a chignon, sharp dark eyes behind designer glasses, and the confident posture of someone who had commanded respect in fine dining for decades. "I'm Claudia Moretti, head sommelier and your assigned mentor. Welcome to Stella Nata." Her handshake was firm, professional. "Nervous?" "Terrified," Lara admitted. Claudia laughed, a rich, genuine sound. "Good. Anyone who isn't terrified on their first day at a restaurant like this is either delusional or an idiot. Come, let me show you around before the chaos begins." For the next 2 hours, Claudia gave Lara a comprehensive tour of the restaurant. The dining rooms. There were 3, each more stunning than the last. The wine cellar, which held bottles worth more than Lara's car. The kitchen, a gleaming temple of stainless steel and focused intensity. The offices, the storage areas, Every corner of the operation. Stella Nata isn't just a restaurant, Claudia explained as they walked. It's Mr. Vieri's pride and joy, his legitimate legacy. He opened it 12 years ago with the goal of earning a Michelin star within 5 years. We got it in 3. We've held it ever since, and we're angling for a second star next year. No pressure then, Lara said weakly. Claudia smiled. You'll be working primarily on the business side, managing staff schedules, handling customer relations, overseeing operations. But Mr. Vieri insists that everyone who works here, regardless of position, understands every aspect of fine dining. So you'll spend time in each department, learning from the best. Why me? Lara asked suddenly. I mean, I know the official reason, but really, why would Mr. Vieri put someone with my background in charge of a place like this? Claudia studied her for a moment, her expression thoughtful. Can I be honest with you? Please. When Elena called to tell me about you, I was skeptical. Furious, actually. I have a dozen candidates with perfect credentials ready to step into a management role here. The idea of some waitress from Newark getting the position because she did Mr. Vieri a favor felt like nepotism at best, dangerous at worst. Lara's stomach sank. And now? Now I've met you and I understand. Claudia led her to the main dining room and gestured around. This place runs on more than just skills and experience. It runs on heart, on genuine care for the guest experience, on the ability to see what people need before they ask for it. You can teach someone about wine pairings and inventory management. You can't teach them to care, and Mr. Vieri thinks you have that quality. After talking with you for 2 hours, I'm inclined to agree. Relief flooded through Lara. Thank you. I promise I won't let you down. Oh, you'll let me down plenty, Claudia said with a wry smile. You'll make mistakes, probably embarrass yourself a few times, maybe even cry in the wine cellar. That's where we all go when we need a moment. But you'll learn, and you'll get better, and eventually, you'll understand why Mr. Vieri trusted you with this. The rest of the day was a whirlwind. Lara shadowed Claudia during lunch service, watching in awe as the restaurant transformed from a quiet space into a choreographed ballet of servers, sommeliers, and kitchen staff, working in perfect synchronization. Every movement had purpose. Every interaction with guests was personalized and attentive. Every detail was executed flawlessly. She met the executive chef, Pierre Dubois, a temperamental Frenchman who terrified everyone but clearly loved what he did. She met the front-of-house manager, David Chen, who knew every regular customer by name and their preferred tables. She met the hostess, the sous chefs, the pastry team, the dishwashers, everyone who made Stella Nat function like a Swiss watch. And she learned that in fine dining, nothing was left to chance. Water glasses were refilled when they hit the halfway mark. Crumbs were swept from tables between courses using a special silver tool. The temperature in each dining room was adjusted based on how many guests were present. Every napkin was folded in exactly the same way. Every plate was positioned at exactly the same angle. It was exhausting and exhilarating and utterly unlike anything Lara had experienced. At 4 p.m., between lunch and dinner service, Claudia led her to a small office on the second floor. Lara's office, apparently, though calling it small was being generous. It had a desk, a computer, a window overlooking the street, and a door she could close. This is yours, Claudia said. Your sanctuary, use it wisely. Lara sat at the desk, running her hands over the smooth wood, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real, tangible hope that her life could be more than just survival. Her computer was already set up with her credentials, and when she logged in, she found an email from Elena with attachments, employee handbook, training schedule, contact list, and a personal note from Adriano. Miss Mitchell, welcome to Stella Notte. Claudia speaks highly of you. Rare for her. Remember, this opportunity is yours because you earned it. The restaurant will demand everything. Rise to meet it. If you need anything, Elena is your first contact. I'm available for serious matters. Give Claudia hell. She enjoys a challenge. A.V. Lara read the message 3 times, hearing his voice in the words. She was determined not to fail him. Dinner service was even busier than lunch. Lara observed, took notes, stayed out of the way as Claudia handled guests with polished charm, and Pierre plated dishes with artistic precision. By 11 p.m., her feet ached, but she felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. Down in the wine cellar, Claudia handed her a glass. Survived your first day, she said. Can I ask you something? Do you know about Mr. Vieri's other businesses? Claudia hesitated. I know the rumors, but I've worked for him 8 years and seen nothing illegal here. Stella Nata is separate, sacred. Whatever else he is, this place is clean. You know what he's capable of. Yes, Claudia said simply, but he's also fair and loyal to those who earn it. People are complicated, even dangerous ones. Lara thought of Adriano's tenderness toward his daughter and his quiet remorse. Thank you, she said softly. Finish that wine. Tomorrow's the real test. That night an unknown text appeared on her phone. First day complete, well done. AV. She smiled. Thank you. I won't waste it. I know. 3 weeks later, Lara was thriving under brutal training, learning wines, VIP preferences, managing chaos. She'd visited Sofia twice, watching the girl slowly heal. Adriano kept his distance, contacting her only through brief emails. She told herself that made things easier. Then, one cold December afternoon, Claudia burst into her office. Lara, the police are here. They're asking for you. 2 detectives waited downstairs, Sarah Reeves and Marcus Torres. Miss Mitchell, Reeves said, we need to ask about your relationship with Adriano Vieri. In her office, Lara felt like she was under interrogation. You worked at a diner for 5 years, Torres said. Now you manage one of the top restaurants in New York. Quite a jump. I was offered a position and accepted. Is that illegal? No, Reeves replied. But given your connection to Mr. Vieri and his daughter's recovery, we have questions. They asked about the night she found Sofia. Lara told the story, keeping to facts. And after that night, he offered you this job out of gratitude? Yes? Has he ever asked you to do anything unusual? Deliver messages, hold packages? No. I manage the restaurant, that's all. Reeves studied her. People close to him often become leverage, or they disappear. Lara froze. Are you saying I'm in danger? Be careful, Reeves said, sliding a card across the desk. If you ever feel threatened, call me. We can protect you. After they left, Lara sat in silence, staring at the card, the reality of Adriano's world settling like ice in her chest. Then Elena called. I heard you had visitors. They said people close to him disappeared. They did, Elena admitted. But those cases were complicated. None involved loyal employees. Stella Nata is clean. So are you. Do your job, stay clear of what doesn't concern you, and you'll be safe. And if the police keep pressuring me, then you tell them the truth, that you work at a restaurant and see nothing improper. And if they try to use you to get to Mr. Vieri, you call me immediately. Understood? Understood, Lara said, though her hands were shaking. That night, she couldn't focus on work. The detective's words replayed in her head as she stared at Detective Reeves's card, wondering if taking this job had been a mistake. She was packing up when her office door opened. Adriano Vieri stood there in a dark suit, his presence filling the small room. Mr. Vieri, she managed. I heard about your conversation with the police, he said, closing the door. I wanted to address it personally. He moved to the window, shoulders tense. This is my fault. I should have known involving you would draw attention. It's fine, Lara said softly. What did you tell them? The truth, that I work for Stella Nade, found Sofia, and that I've seen nothing illegal. That's the truth, right? It is, he said. The restaurant's legitimate. It's the one good thing I've built. His honesty surprised her. He seemed less like a dangerous man, more like someone fighting his own past. They said people close to you disappear, she murmured, and you're afraid I might hurt you. Should I be? I'm not a good man, Adriano admitted, but I have rules. You returned my daughter. That debt is sacred. You're under my protection, never my control. That's a lot of responsibility, she said. You're not just anyone. You risked your life for my child. He straightened. If the police contact you again, tell the truth. If they threaten you, Elena will handle it. And if they offer witness protection in exchange for information? Adriano paused. Then take it if you truly believe you're in danger. I won't stop you. Forcing your loyalty would make me the monster they think I am. He reached for the door, then added, Sophia's been drawing pictures of you, calls you her superhero. Will you visit Saturday? Yes. Good. Thomas will pick you up. And Lara, Stella Nate is better with you here. After he left, Lara stared at Reeves's card, torn between duty and loyalty. She was working for a criminal, yet also helping a little girl heal. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. It was one of Sophia's drawings. My hero. Tears filled her eyes. She placed the card in her desk drawer, not discarded, just waiting. For now, she'd keep doing her job one day at a time. On Saturday, Thomas drove her to Alpine. Sophia ran into her arms, chattering about dolls and movies. Adriana watched from the doorway, quietly grateful. For 2 hours, Lara forgot everything else. Police, fear, doubts. There was only a little girl learning to smile again. That evening, as Thomas drove her home, Detective Reeves called. Lara let it go to voicemail. She wasn't ready to choose a side. Not yet. But she knew the day would come. And when it did, her choice might change everything.